fans, welcome back to 237, back with another review. And this will be one of the last of the A24 films that I'll be getting to. There's one more that I'm waiting on to come in, and maybe two or three other ones that I plan on picking up. But this is one that I've been waiting on, and actually, this is one I've wanted to see for quite some time. Came out in 2018. Some places will say 2019, depending on where you were. It first premiered in 2018. And this is actually my third time buying this damn film because the first two did not work. I bought the store I go to, bought a Blu-ray, did play in the PS4, returned it, got another one, did play in the PS4. They were made on demand Blu-rays, so I thought maybe they were just defective. Looked up on Amazon. I guess that was a common issue. I have a region-free DVD player, so I just said, screw it, I'll just buy a DVD. This came in, it worked, so now I finally got to see it. And this is one I'm not going to get too much into the plot. One, because there really isn't one. It's very simple. But two, this is just a movie you have to go into as blind as possible. Because what I thought this was going to be, and what it ended up being, was totally different. I mean, the aesthetic was there, the style was there, but just the kind of story was way different than I expected. And it's a film by Peter Strickland, who did Barbarian Sound Studio, which I believe is a Italian giallo tribute, homage, throwback type film. Not a real giallo, just like a tribute. And the movie The Duke of Burgundy. And this has been called a giallo, which one? No, it's not. It's an English film, so it's not a giallo. When I hear people say it's in the style of giallo, it really only is in the visual department. It's not a giallo story whatsoever. It's not a murder mystery, which is what I thought it was going to be. So I don't know if people just think giallo is a visual style or a filmmaking style. It is to a point, but there's more to it than that. So, no, this is not a giallo. It's not a giallo tribute. It's just done kind of in the visual style of Italian giallo. But it's his film in fabric. And, yeah. The first two times I bought this film was back when I reviewed like Climax, The Feast, before I moved here. And yeah, I had heard good things. I know that people that like it really like it, and especially if you look up the reviews on Amazon, there are people that don't realize that this is also a comedy. It's a horror comedy, but the comedy is very dark. It's very dry. It's very British dry humor. So they think it's just poorly made, or they think it's weird for the sake of being weird. And in some instances, I do think it is. And then you got everyone else just calling it a giallo, which is not. Though I do believe Barbarian Sound Studio is more like a giallo throwback. But written and directed by Peter Strickland, stars Marianne Jean-Baptiste, Leo Bill, Haley Squires, Julian Barrett, Gwendolyn Christie. Ari Wegner did the cinematography, and Cavern of Antimatter composed the score. And the score is one of the high points. This is definitely a movie where it is style over substance, yes. So the cinematography, the colors, and everything visually and the sound design is beautiful. It does. There are parts to the score. It's very Goblin-esque. There's also a lot of like harpsichord type scores, or just this very eerie like a guitar string scratching sound. The score is very, very well done. And I went into it expecting the sort of giallo throwback that you would see by the Onetti brothers, which if you want Giallo homage films, you can't beat the Onetti brothers. That's how you do a throwback. Or like the husband wife team that did Strange Color Your Body's Tears and Amer, or even the Canadian film The Editor. I thought it was going to be something like that, maybe more like The Editor, because that's also a comedy. And it does kind of have nods. There were parts that made me think of Suspiria. It did have this overall kind of feel of like a David Lynch film. And I know that's very obvious to say, but it did have this Mulholland Drive kind of feel to it, which in other ways, it reminded me more of Eraserhead, where there is a story, there is something going on, but there's just smaller things that are more weird than what's actually going on. Like, for example, how characters will go into a hypnotic, almost sensual trance whenever this one character just describes how to fix a washing machine. That happens to several characters. Just little odd character quirks like that. And it does have this very dream-like quality to it. Like, it does kind of feel like you're watching a dream, which dreams are kind of a recurring theme throughout this film. So that's as far as I go for saying David Lynch. And I know that's kind of a go ahead, or kind of a go to for what people will compare it to. But it did have parts that reminded me of Suspiria plot wise. The colors really pop like an early Argento film, but because it's so red, it did make me think more about a Suspiria. And no, Suspiria is not a Giallo either. But the most I can say about the plot before getting into spoilers is there's this red dress that's sold at this high-end department store. I think it's called Dentley and Chopper. That has very odd employees, very like black Victorian dress clerks, and the one male proprietor that has like a Peter Cushing type look to him. But they're very kind of like cryptic. They almost act like fortune tellers. I was getting the vibe that they were like witches. There's certain scenes that kind of makes it look like they're the string pullers of everything that's going on. So that's why it made me think of a Suspiria. I thought it was like a store run by witches. Spoiler alert. Can't really say that. I was going to say it's not, but this is also a movie that doesn't really answer questions. I mean, there are two ways that you can go into this film. Either the character's point of view, like the protagonist, or the dress's point of view. And it does kind of make two different stories, which I will say, well, no, I'm not going to say that either. This movie kind of has me perplexed because I was not expecting this kind of movie. I was expecting it to be very weird, very stylish, very visual, and it was. But I was expecting more of like a murder mystery, like a giallo, maybe centered around a dress or dress making, not a killer dress that haunts or curses anyone who wears it and gives them bad dreams and causes their death. That's the movie. That's the most I can say plot-wise. There really isn't much of anything else plot-wise. I mean, there is some symbolism and a metaphor for consumerism, greed, vanity, stuff like that. Mostly consumerism. But this is really one that you would watch just to be bedazzled by its visuals, either with how it's shot, how it's composed, or just what you're actually seeing. I mean, there's There's a sex scene with a mannequin that I've never seen before in this. Like a mannequin that actually menstruates, which is bizarre. And a lot of odd stuff like that. And I'm just gonna have to get into spoilers because it's even just talking about the weird thing. I guess another thing that's Giallo like would be just the character quirks. You go back to any classic Giallo, there's characters that have weird quirks to them, and uh, what was her name? Maria Jean Baptiste's character as Sheila, who works in a bank. Her two bosses are very bizarre. They're just as bizarre as the witch employees at the department store, where they criticize every little thing she does, but then they want to know all this personal stuff. Almost like it's a therapy session. Like they're very intrigued by dreams that she has, or anyone that they talk to. Uh, so a lot of weird character quirks like that. Some of the effects, like with the dress, the CGI doesn't quite work or looks obvious. And I honestly I can't tell if that's part of the comedy or not. But another thing that does help make it feel like Giallo or just classic Euro horror is that they did go back to that thick, vibrant red, almost paint-like blood, which I'm always a fan of whenever I see that. I thought that was great. I really just don't know what to make of this film. Uh, would this be in my top 10 A24 horror films? If we're just going style, sure. I definitely enjoyed it. I do think it might have overstayed its welcome just a little bit. It's 118 minutes. And just with the way the film goes, because it kind of plays out like an anthology, it almost would have worked better as just a short film. But I get why they did that because it has to show this dress going from person to person. And it's not a movie like Psycho that can just have that drastic change. I didn't want to say that before spoilers, but yeah. So would this be in my top 10 A24 horror films? If it is, it's like number 10, 9, or 8. Uh, the other one I have on order that I'm waiting on is Lamb. And then I think I've seen all A24 horror films. Uh, I don't know if this would make the top 10. I really don't. But I definitely enjoyed watching it. Everything about it on a technical level works. It's very visually interesting. The the cinematography, just the design of everything, the lighting, the sound, and everything is beautiful and definitely surreal and odd and very interesting. The acting across the board is good. It's very well acted. I will say, Marianne Jean Baptiste is the takeaway actress. She was definitely the best out of all of them. And again, whether you look at it from the character's point of view or the dress's point of view, it's still an interesting film. And I'm guessing that the reason why there's not really answers to anything as to what it's trying to say or what's really going on or what's happening is that this was meant to just be a stylish film. Meant to be stylish for the sake of it. And I mean, yes, there are some answers to it, like I guess the whole idea about consumerism and stuff like that. But really, and I guess where the dress came from or what that's trying to say. But it it definitely does have this feeling of just being stylish for the sake of it. But I still really enjoyed seeing it. So yeah, that's as most as I can really say uh, without spoilers. So now spoilers. So really, we have two kinds of stories going on. We have the character of Sheila, who works at the bank. She's, I guess, recently divorced. Didn't say how long ago it was, but she's feeling older. She wants to start dating again. She wants to feel beautiful again. So she goes and buys this dress so she can go out on dates. She goes on one, kind of a disaster. Goes on another one, it works. But this dress, it gives her a rash on her chest, gives her bad dreams, flips the fuck out when she puts it in the washing machine, destroys the washing machine. And, I mean, there are scenes that did make me think, okay, is this run by witches? Because there's a few scenes where, one, just how they look and how they act, the employees. But then there's like that scene where after closing, they like wipe down the mannequins, they finger it, and it menstruates, while the Peter Cushing looking guy pleasures himself and watches. It's a very sensual film as well. But also, like, there's a part where she goes for a walk with her new boyfriend, and this guy's dog just attacks her, tears it to shreds. But then when she gets the dress back, it's perfectly put back together. She puts it in her closet, and it's just pushing itself back and forth on the rack. While we cut back to one of the employees kind of just doing this really fast, almost to the rhythm of it going back and forth. So I was thinking, like, okay, so it's like Suspiria. It's a store run by witches. She finds out that the model in the catalog that wore the dress died. And the employee even tries to rip the page out so Sheila can't look at it because she tries to return the dress. But then when she leaves, the employee like rolls the page of the catalog up and then sticks it up inside herself. Again, weird. And then just she's on her way to her new boyfriend's house. It crashes. She thinks she sees all these mannequins in the road, swerves, crashes, and dies. That's about halfway through. And then we shift. Then we shift to this guy, Reg, played by, was it Lou Brill? Of course, Leo Bill, who people might recognize as Jones from 28 Days Later. He was the soldier that everyone kind of picked on, the kind of cowardly one. He's a washing machine repairman. He buys the dress at a thrift shop for stag night, which I guess is like a bachelor party. So he can wear it, then all his friends can kind of make fun of him. But then he gets the rash, he has the dreams. And then there's weird scenes with him too. Like every time he goes in to talk to his boss doesn't speak and just stares at him. At one point, like eats his ID or whatever. His wife seems uninterested. Like there's even a scene when he's having sex with her. It looks like he's giving it his all, and she's just talking. She's just having a conversation. But every time he explains to people how to fix a washing machine, the sound like trails off and they go into some hypnotic, almost orgasmic trance. First it was a lady customer at her house. Then it was his fiance, who even goes like cross-eyed. Now, he gets fired. He goes to the bank, Sheila's bank, and he talks to the two managers there. And they get him to explain washing machine stuff. And they even start looking like holding each other's hands. So like they have him explain dreams that he's had as well. Then his fiance wears it. It does the thing again where it gets put in the washing machine. It freaks out. it gets left in a closet, and it gets pissed, it fucks with the boiler to create carbon monoxide. And I get the reason why they had like one story end, then go to Reg, was to just show the dress going from person to person. But that's why I think it should have either been an anthology, like, or an actual anthology. Because this way it feels more like Stephen King's Cat's Eye, where it's three stories with just a cat uh, wandering around, and that's the connective tissue. Here's the dress. Or it would have worked better as just a short film. But I really did like the Sheila character. She was acted the best. She was the one that you cared about the most. And it was kind of jarring just to have her killed off. With a couple references, like we see a news article about bank clerk killed in road tragedy when he goes to get a loan from her managers. And then it shows his fiance wearing the dress to the store to buy another dress. He's watching TV. He dies of carbon monoxide. And then this fight breaks out at the store while she's in the a dressing room. Pandemonium breaks out. The dress falls on this heater, causes a fire, and everyone just starts stealing everything, even to the point of attacking the maid employee and ripping stuff off of her, including her wig. Which I guess that's supposed to symbolize, greed. That's the greed of it all. And so then we have Sheila dead in the car accident. We have Reg dead from carbon monoxide. We have his fiance, Babs, that died in the fire. And it actually ends with the maid employee grabbing this one mannequin, the one from earlier. She gets in a dumbwaiter, and we've seen her do this before, where she just gets in the dumbwaiter and she's like crouched on her knees and like puts her head down, but we don't see where she goes. Here she gets in with the mannequin, dumbwaiter goes down, and we see the model from the catalog sewing a dress. Goes down again. We see Sheila sewing the dress. Another one, Reg, sewing the dress. And then his fiance also sewing the dress. We go down a few more levels, and there's just red fabric, sewing machine, and an empty seat, implying that, there will be an endless levels of people making this dress. And I guess that could be seen as like the descent into hell. Yeah, I did like it. I don't know if this was part of the comedy, but like when she goes down, we see the model first. We kind of see her in the dumbwaiter. We go down, then we see Sheila. We cut back to her in the dumbwaiter. She's like, almost as if we're the audience, be like, oh, or the movie doing that to us, like, huh? Gotcha. That's what I got, at least. We keep seeing her reaction every time it reveals someone. And yes, we know it's their souls, and it looks like the thread is hooked to like an IV, so it's like made with their blood almost. I guess almost to say that our own consumerism will kill us. Our own consumerism is our sin. But also, you look at how the dress was used by each person, and looking at it from the dress's point of view. Sheila wore it for vanity reasons. She wanted to look beautiful again, but then decided to get rid of it. So it felt cast out. Reg bought it as the object of ridicule, and the whole point was to wear it so his friends could laugh at him as part of his bachelor party. So that was his, he bought it to be laughed at. His fiance wore it and liked it, but she wore it shopping to buy another dress, so it was kind of like jealousy. So it's almost kind of like Christine, but with a dress instead of a car. They each kind of wronged this dress in their own way, even though it's already an evil killer cursed dress. That's just what I got out of it, at least. And then it just ends with, and I do like how this shot was composed, with the store just black, burnt rubble, and then just this vibrant red dress laying on the pile of rubble, and a fireman picks it up. Which there are some great shots. I mean, in the window outside the store, there's all like these different rings, like big ring going to smaller, like purple and white to kind of look like a spiral that we zoom in on a few times. And then when the store catches on fire, we zoom in on those. But the color design, the color palette of the film is awesome, very much like an Argento film. The score does feel a lot like a Goblin-esque type score at times. The humor, I think, is just more circumstantial and maybe more of just like a what the fuck. And like the whole thing with him describing how to fix washing machines, I don't know if that is just to say, because they kind of say how he does it in a very relaxing way, or if it's just like, oh my god, that's so interesting, tell me more. I don't know if that's the joke. But there is just a lot of, and I don't like to say Lynch because I know that's such a go-to for people, but a lot of like what the fuck David Lynch type moments. Mostly like this, like Eraserhead and Mulholland Drive, but done in the way of like a 70s Italian film. And really the only Giallo aspect would be how it looks and some of the character quirks and the music. It's not Giallo-esque story-wise at all. Uh, I, I actually wish people would say Giallo throwback or Giallo homage, because it's really just the visual style, which makes me think that people think Giallo is a visual style, like black and white or something. And no, Giallo is like a kind of story. It's a genre. It's not just a visual style. But I still liked In Fabric. I mean, it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. It was definitely a different kind of film than I thought it was going to be. But I still enjoyed it for what it was. And I am a fan of movies that are just stylish for the sake of it. They don't rely on story or arcs or answering questions. Just do it just because, if it's done well. And I would say that this is done well. You know, I'm a fan of movies that can just be visually weird and interesting just because. I know, I mean, if you want to laugh, or if you're the same way and you want to laugh, go read the reviews on Amazon, because there are people just calling this nonsensical, stupid, the worst movie they've ever seen. And to each their own, but if you're saying that and not realizing that, you know, some movies are style over substance, or, you know, getting mad at it because they found it humorous, well, it's a horror comedy. But yeah, I thought for sure this was gonna make the top 10 A24 horror films, but I'm mostly glad that I finally got to see it. So really, the only other horror film left by A24 is Lamb, and that's on its way. I think it'll be here around October 7th. I was going to do Life After Beth and Enemy as well, as far as the horror films go. I still might pick those up. I don't think Enemy is a horror film. I think that's more of just like a psychological thriller or a drama. I see people calling it a horror film. Life After Beth is a horror comedy, but so maybe after Lamb, I'll wrap up the A24 horror, the A24 films. But yeah, mostly just glad I finally got a copy that plays and I got to see it, and this has made me a fan of Peter Strickland. I will definitely be checking out Barbarian Sound Studio, which is actually IFC. So he's got one A24, one by IFC, which my top two favorite companies. That one definitely is more of a Giallo throwback. That one is more like, Abracadabra, Francesca by the Onetti brothers, or Strange Color Your Body's Tears, Amer, and The Editor. More like that. And if you want to see more, well, I can't really use this as an example, but more Giallo-esque films, I recently did pick up Don't Look Now and Eyes of Laura Mars, which are American films from the 70s. People call them Gialli. If it's American, it's not a Giallo, but people still think that genre is subjective, or that everything is subjective. They're Giallo-esque. They're inspired by Giallo. It's like the American version, but more thriller than horror and not slasher. Because no, slasher's not in America. I should just make a video on what is a Giallo and why most people get it wrong. But yeah, that's In Fabric, and thank you for watching.